Welcome to Invincible Teams, a podcast for team leaders and business owners who are tired of dealing with office drama and politics, high turnover, and teams not meeting their potential. We know that team leaders and business owners like you are pretty much always under pressure to get the most out of your teams. And we also know that most teams only operate at about 58% of their actual potential, and we've got the tools and training to make that number keep going up. We believe that every team should reach their potential, and that if we get intentional, our teams can become invincible. All right, welcome back to Invincible Teams. Cody, you recently got to do a little Enneagram workshop, right?
Yes, I did.
So today, for the podcast, I think what we're going to do is just process your experience from that a little bit, see what kind of insights you had, things that you learned, things that really stuck out to you and to the team that you were working with. So, man, take it away. Tell us a little bit about what you did, and yeah, we'll just go from there.
Yeah. So got to do an Enneagram clinic with our Camp Pondo team out in California. So this is the team that I work for.
Yeah.
And I think we had 10 or 11 people that got to show up on that team. If you're familiar with the Enneagram, I'll just give you kind of a quick insight into the types that are on our team. So with the 10 or 11 people that we have, myself leading the clinic, I'm a 7, identifies as type 7. We have 3 9s. It was kind of funny because 2 of them sat next to each other, and that was just a really funny, even in the aspects of the clinic, having 2 9s sitting next to each other in that. But then we had a counterphobic 6, we had a phobic 6, type 5, we have an 8, another 9, a type 2, a 1. And then one of our guys that didn't get to show up, I'm pretty sure he's another 2. And so, yeah, a pretty wide array of types. And then one of the things that you put in the keynote for this clinic is at the very end of it, we kind of do like a team dynamic thing.
Right.
So we wrote out some of the things that the types that we don't have, and like what that does for us as a team, or what it prevents us from doing as a team.
Yeah.
And so for us, we are lacking a 3 and a 4 on our team. And so we just talked about some of that, and like that was pretty helpful for us to say that, hey, we don't have like that 3 that is really just a super driven person. Right. We have driven people, but for that person, one of the things that I like to tell people is I feel like 3s can always take the vision beyond the walls of the organization. Like 3s are the people that they hear something and they want to achieve something. And it's almost like, as a buddy of mine, it's like, he wants to see something happen in the city. He goes and talks to the mayor,
Yeah.
Like I would try to talk to my neighbors or something. He's like, no, we're going to the mayor,
Right.
And so, yeah, this team dynamics piece was so cool. But honestly, one of the most amazing parts of it, I mean, we walked through some pretty basic, Enneagram type stuff.
Yeah.
People learned about different types, and maybe I think we had one person on the team that didn't have a very clear understanding of what his type was.
Okay.
He was a type 2. And so obviously he learned a lot about what that looks like, and then got to learn about other types. But then we got to this piece that you created that, man, was just game changing. It's called Rules of Engagement. And I think that's one of the things I was the most excited about going into this is most of our team knows Enneagram language. We've been talking about this for the last 3 or 4 years. But when it gets to how these types engage and interact with each other on a day-to-day basis as teammates, especially at a youth camp, especially in 2020, where even though we're at camp, we actually didn't get to do camp this past season. And we're not getting to do camp for our winter camp season that would start in January.
Right.
And so what does it look like to work at a camp, to continue to move forward as a camp team without actually doing camp? And so one of the things I was really pumped about in talking about these rules of engagement is, hey, how can we continue to invest in each other, encourage each other, and grow as an organization using our kind of just like natural skill sets and the way that we're wired. And so Ryan when we put this keynote together and we were walking through it, we got to this default volume section where it's I'm looking at it right now. So there's the first picture is someone sitting in a library. It seems very quiet, very cozy. And in that you have a 9, a type 5, and a counterphobic, or a phobic 6, sorry. And the next one is this really pretty piano picture, and you can almost imagine like it's like you're in like a nightclub, or like we'll go lounge, like a nice like quiet lounge where people are sipping wine or coffee, and there's this really elegant piano in the background. And so
pianos can be dynamic though, right?
They
There's
can
also
be very,
like a jazz piano,
exactly,
like really
like the dueling pianos down in Little Rock, where it's like just madness. But in that you have the 4, the 1, and the 2. And what's really special about that is that on our team, we have a 1 and a 2. And this picture is in the middle between 2 other pictures. And what was so interesting about that is even when I saw this, before I saw the next slide, which kind of lays out where these types fall in terms of communication in a meeting, is the 1 is smack dab in the middle. It's in the middle picture, but it's in the middle between the 4 and the 2.
Right.
And I immediately thought like, oh, this is going to be so good for my boss who is a 1, because that's exactly what happens is every single time we have a meeting where we're kind of stepping into something or planning something, he is so good about listening and taking all this in. And he'll really speak to the logistics and like how we're going to see this happen and like how we're going to do it right. And then he's kind of done, you know, at the end of that. And so, and then you get into this big, humongous concert. There's fireworks, there's lights, there's like probably, 1,000 people in this picture just going berserk. And in that, and I liked how you made the bubbles red, just almost like a siren, like visually. And in that you have type 7, counterphobic 6, 3, and 8. Yeah. And what's really funny about this is that me and my wife, so I'm a 7, she identifies as a counterphobic 6, and then we have an 8 on our team. And more than likely, if you were to walk in any random meeting we are having at Camp Pondo, myself, my wife, or Sean, the 8, is talking.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just laughed as soon as I saw that, because I was like, this is so accurate to the volume or the consistency at which we talk or express or process ideas out loud. Right. Or for that 8, just really driven and wanting to make sure that we're doing what we said we're going to do. We're doing it quickly. And so, yeah. But then you go to this next slide, and when we were where this kind of fell in the clinic is we've done, we've talked about types, we've talked about wings, we've talked about stress and security numbers, and really the dynamic pieces of the Enneagram. And I think people were kind of tracking, and they were really following along, and maybe even learned some new things about their type. But my goal in doing this clinic for our team was I wanted us to leave a better team, not just more self-aware people. I mean, ultimately, that's a huge goal. But I wanted to make sure that as a team, we were able to understand each other and be able to show more grace for ourselves, but for our teammates. Right. And so there's just been so many moments where you leave a meeting and you're like, oh my gosh, this is probably people like thinking about me. They're like, Cody talks so much, or something I know that I do is if I'm leading a meeting and people aren't really like engaging, I'll just keep talking, and that's not good. Don't do that. But this rules of engagement piece, I love how you laid it out, and it really gave our team, I think, an understanding of how to actively, I'll just say love each other well, how to really speak and give each other the necessary tools to bring their best. In a team setting, whether it be a meeting or whether we're having a dreaming session or something like that. And so you have these numbers laid out in the exact same form as the default volume, right? But this time you put some notes under here. So under the first little group of numbers, which is 9, 5, and phobic 6, which remember they were in that library, that very quiet space. These are people who are typically not going to come out very quickly with their ideas. They feel like that if they do, they're going to cause conflict or rock the boat, or honestly just makes them feel uncomfortable. Right. And under there, you said, give these people the chance to go first, So in a meeting with your 9s, 5s, and phobic 6s, allow these people to speak. Like once you've presented an idea.
And even ask them to.
Exactly,
right?
exactly. Yeah. And then if they don't want to, or if they feel uncomfortable, allow them to pass.
Right.
And then don't forget about them.
Yeah.
Like follow up later.
Yeah.
And on a team where we have 3 9s, a 5, I mean, that's half our team. Literally half our team is that bubble right there. And our assistant director is a phobic 6. And man, I just feel like that was so life-giving for them.
Yeah.
Because these are probably people who go home at night sometimes struggling with, like, does my voice really matter?
Right.
Like, do I really have the opportunity or the ability to speak my concerns or desires or like passion into what we do?
Well, and one of the reasons why this is important, why the order of this is important, is because as you go further down this scale towards the 1s, the 2s, 7s, 3s, 8s, right? The further down that you go, the more weight that those that those opinions and voices seem to carry. That's when we talk about default volume. There is an element of literal volume, but there's also an element of how much weight do these people have when they say stuff. And so even for me as a 1 who I'm halfway down the scale, I don't mean things as concretely as it usually is perceived by other people, right? You go to the other end of the scale and get to 3s and 8s, and normally they are like, when it comes out of their voice, it's as close to reality as possible, right? And so if I say something, or if a 3 or an 8 or somebody says something, it sounds so sure that for a 9 or a 5 or anybody like that, it's much more difficult to speak up because you're like, man, this train has already left the station. It doesn't matter what I say. So that's why the order is important. That's why we start with 9s, 5s, and phobic 6s, is because they need that space and that freedom to be able to believe that they still have time to give their thoughts. The train hasn't left the station.
And you put 9s first, like on this. And I've heard all 3 9s on our team at some point say, well, hey, you know, the 8 on our team or the 7 on our team or the 1 on our team are more passionate about this, so I don't need to say anything. At the end of the day, they'll get it done, but it's like that's not enough. Like we need to hear from you. Like we want to hear from you. You see things, especially these 9s, like being able to see from almost every angle. Like we need your input. And then for the phobic 6, he's and you put something, you talked about these leadership voices, and for the 6, for that leadership voice, I remember I didn't tell you this, but you had silent majority. I actually changed that to forecasting because I wanted specifically for the 6s on our team who do this a lot, I wanted them to know that, hey, a superpower of yours is being able to help us not only see the hurdles ahead, but to be able to like build bridges or trails around them. And so we talked about this in this rules of engagement, and I tried to, as best I could, as we talked about this and kind of moved down this line, I would reiterate those leadership voices of like, hey, don't forget that like this is what you bring to the table when you speak in health. You know, like the 9, your leadership voice. So when they use their kind of natural wiring and what they pay attention to, and when they speak that in health over their team, is for the 9, you had speed break. And I was like, 9s, we need that necessary, like, whoa. Like, we need that necessary, like, are we sure?
Otherwise, we're going to derail this thing.
Exactly. Like, I can't tell you how many times my 9 friends and teammates have been like, hey, Cody, you've said about 14 ideas today. Are we sure we're going to do any of those? You know,
well, like, you know, and just to follow this little rabbit trail here, I know you spent all day yesterday riding mountain bikes. Oh my gosh. Right? And you're going to do a little bit more today. So when is the appropriate time to brake for you on a bike?
Oh, way before. Way before.
You have to brake before you go into the turn, because what happens if you take the turn too quickly?
You're going to crash.
You're going to eat rocks and dirt and trees.
Here's a very like real scenario with this. Is yesterday I hit a drop that I've been eyeing for like about 6 years. I've seen this thing for 6 years. I've never had the nerve to do it, and I finally did it yesterday, and it's the biggest thing I've ever done on my bike.
Wow.
And I, no joke, had this moment. Like I had the voice of my 9 friends in my head going, Cody, you can't you can't like chicken mid like drop. You have to fully commit to this, because if I were to, and this is just a rule of mountain biking, hesitation leads to broken bones. And so I have to fully send this, commit to this. So I have to know before I go down this little roll in that if I'm on this, I'm in it. And so anyways, that's that speed break. That's that necessary thing that I think all three of these numbers kind of provide in that, especially the 9s, but 9s, 5s, and phobic 6s have this ability to help us in the beginning. Because honestly, like with the way you've laid this out, is if I'm giving this 9s, 5s, and phobic 6s an opportunity to speak first, there's a good probability that something that I've brought up may not even be worth pursuing. Like it may not even be worth our time and energy and resources.
And that way you don't spend the time on it, only to find out later that there's something you completely missed. That the 5s were sitting there on and never had a chance to express.
Or we were joking about this before we hit record, but there's been meetings where we've spent an hour and a half talking about something, and then at the very end of the meeting, the phobic 6 would finally speak this thing that has probably been like eating them alive on the inside, and it blows the whole thing up. And it used to make me really mad, and now I want to bring that to the beginning of the meeting. Let's talk about that earlier, because by the time that we've talked about it for an hour and a half, I'm kind of attached to it. And if it blows up then I'm mad and I'm frustrated.
Well, and you're talking about this in the context of a camp staff, which obviously there's big impacts for that. But if you translate that to like a big organization company, you're talking about tons of lost revenue, because you just had a team that spent a couple hours on something that they could have spent somewhere else, and potentially even worse if they actually start to implement stuff that they only then find out after weeks or months of implementing that there's this big thing that was missed. You're talking about tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars in wasted revenue, right? And so this is a big deal.
It is a big deal. It is a big deal. And you just triggered something, is that one of the things, like as a leader, I kept showing up to meetings, being a 7, and also having these people on our team that were really carrying, like you said, that weight. We're kind of carrying these meetings. We're speaking a lot. We're usually the ones processing the ideas, and these 9s and these 5s on our team, not talking a lot. Honestly, were communicating to me like, you just don't care. But in reality, it's not that they don't care. It's the fact that I wasn't giving them the time and the opportunity to speak the things that they care about or the things that they were seeing. And so,
I think that's great. Let's move to the middle section here, unless you got anything else to add on this one.
And so really with this one, the only thing that really caught, and I think like our team connected with this middle section where you have 4s, 1s, and 2s, as the note you had under it was honest input for the good of the team. And that is all that I get from these people, is that when the 1 and the 2, we don't have a 4 on our team, like I said, but the 1 and the 2 on our team, when they speak, it is like, our executive director is a 1. And when he speaks, I know and trust and believe that like, if we're going to commit time to doing something, he wants it done right. But he wants it done right in a way that is going to really set us up as an organization to win and to succeed. And then the 2 on our team, when they speak, it's really about how what we're aiming to do is going to impact the people that we serve. And so if you're in a for-profit business, this is the customer, or the customer experience. And so if you've got a 2 on your team, those are typically things that they care about. Is that, hey, if we're going to spend time and money on this, I want to make sure that this is having a positive impact on the way that people like engage with it and they experience it and they feel it. And so that was huge. And then honestly, I learned a lot from this, because at the end of this, you have 7s, counterphobic 6s, 3s, and 8s. And the notes you had underneath it were assume others are trying to help me, like you move forward. See how I said me there? And then answer questions without making statements and decisions. And this is huge. This is so huge. Me and my wife, 7s don't think about consequences a lot. Just a reality, sorry. When I hit that drop yesterday, it kind of like came back to my mind of like, I wasn't really thinking about what would happen if I messed this up. But my wife, as the counterphobic 6, is. And that's where we get hung up a lot is, and honestly, the perk of this is helping us understand and be able to pay attention to what others pay attention to. And so knowing that when she speaks up is that there's value in that, and I should listen.
Yeah.
And then at the very end, you have, the 8s. And one of the things that I shared with the team that I'd heard from someone a while back was that most 8s go to bed every single night asking one question: did I make a difference today? Like, did I make an impact on the world today? And being people who are very driven by the why is that I like that you have 8s last, because I personally think that 8s have the ability to really hold us accountable to our why.
Yeah.
And so if an 8 is speaking last from a place of health, reminding us of, hey, why we're doing this in the first place.
Yeah.
Man, what a way to end that. And so this was huge. And I think this is someone that, if you're a leader or if you're a part of moving a team forward or wanting to see a team move forward, I think this rules of engagement piece is massive.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to help our team step into, we're in a very planning heavy season right now.
Sure.
We're actually stepping away from a very typical season so that we can plan and dream on some things that I think are going to set up the organization for the next potentially 50 years.
Wow.
Like, it's a big,
that's awesome.
Big season. It's fun for me because it's very future oriented right now. I get to dream a lot. But I want our team as a whole to be able to participate in that and contribute to that. And this was massive in helping us grow into that. And then honestly, just the last thought as we wrap this up, is as we left this clinic, it was really funny because there were some things that were like, we joked about.
Sure.
You put in there like the weapon systems of like a 1 is like poking holes.
Yeah.
And then for a 7, it's jumping ship.
Yep.
And so right after the clinic, we actually had to have a little meeting about something that popped up. And our one leader was talking about something, and I asked a question. He goes, "Cody, are you poking holes in my thing?" And I went, "I'm jumping ship," and I kind of ran out of the room.
Yeah.
But and there's humor in this, and it's a way to like really be able to love and encourage your teammates, and understanding like what it is that they pay attention to, what drives them, what helps them move forward. But I just think that if you're a leader, we just talked about in an episode about this idea of really growing in how we challenge our teams and then how we support them. Is that stepping into this kind of stuff, whether it's me or Ryan, or whether just on your own time digging into the Enneagram and self-awareness, I think that the more that you're able to know your team, the more you're going to be able to support and challenge them in ways that really matter to them. And so this was huge.
Yeah. No, I love it. It's one of the newer pieces of our training that we've implemented, and with the teams that we've been able to do it with, it's been amazing. It's one of the most, I think, practical. You can actually implement something right away with this, and it has just been so cool. It's been kind of light bulb coming on moments for a lot of teams that I've got to talk through this with, and am excited to continue to bring this to people. I think people will enjoy this conversation today. I'll make sure, if you haven't found it already, in the show notes for this will be a link where you can see this, exactly what we're talking about, rules and engagement stuff. But yeah, anything else? Any closing thoughts?
No. Hope you guys are having happy holiday season.
Yeah.
Whenever this comes out.
Yeah, I'm not sure when it'll be, but I'm sure they're in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. People are, like we said, they're in the debate of Thanksgiving and Christmas and when that comes around. So anyways, we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks for listening today to the Invincible Teams podcast. We'd like to challenge you now to go share this episode with a team leader or business owner that might like it. And just like every podcast, we appreciate all the subscribes, likes, shares, reviews, and 5-star ratings you can give us. And like we always say, we believe that every team should reach their potential, and that if we get intentional, our teams can become invincible. See you next time.